Hi, welcome to my kitchen. I'm Linda Graebner-Smith and I'm the managing director for our brands for the PRS here in Wisconsin. And I want to thank you for joining me today as I make Harvest Butterscotch Pumpkin Muffins. It's a recipe that little kids absolutely love. And I know that a lot of our colleagues across North America have a lot of little ones, and you will enjoy seeing how much your kids love this recipe this Thanksgiving season. Starting with our dry ingredients. And I'm going to put them together here. This is 1 3 cups flour of all-purpose flour, 1 3/4 cups. And we're going to be adding a 1/2 cup of white standard sugar and then a 1/2 cup of compressed brown sugar, and I'm using dark brown sugar just to give it a little bit of extra flavor today. And to add to that, we're going to have just a 1/2 teaspoon of salt and a 1/2 teaspoon of baking powder, and then also a whole teaspoon of baking soda. We're also going to be adding the spices right now, and we have the cinnamon and the ginger and the clove. So we're going to whip these dry ingredients together, and I'm going to use a whisk. And go ahead and use your fingers to make sure that the lumps in the brown sugar are broken up. See, if you would love to change the calories in this recipe, I have in the past used other substitutions of Truvia, both the Truvia brown sugar and the Truvia white sugar instead of regular sugar and brown sugar. We're using a cup of pumpkin puree, and it's important that you get the pumpkin, the 100% pumpkin, and not pumpkin filling. Don't make that mistake. So pumpkin puree. I melted this in the microwave just before you got here today. And you could use ghee if you want to cut down the solids from the butter. Then we're also going to be adding 2 large or jumbo eggs. I'm using 2 jumbo eggs here. I'm going to whip them up just a little bit ahead of time just to make sure that when they blend in with the dry ingredients that it's going to be a little bit more evenly distributed. Pour those into the wet ingredients. Now I'm going to take another whisk and I whisk together the wet ingredients before I put them into the dry ingredients, just to make sure that those are blended nicely. These bowls were bowls that I inherited from my Grandma Sanner, my mom's mom, who was a fantastic cook. She had 7 kids and was a farmer's wife and passed on a lot of these special dishes. Okay, there it is, blended nicely together. Now we're going to make a well inside the middle of this dish. And then we're going to pour the wet ingredients into the dry ingredients. Just like that. Just stir these together. Now you're probably wondering, why aren't you using your very expensive Cuisinart mixer? And one thing about making quick breads like this is that you could very easily overmix them and develop the gluten too much. You don't want a gluten develop like a yeast bread dough. You just want to stir it until all the components are moistened. But I'm going to be adding a 1/2 cup of the toasted pecans. I toasted these in the oven before you got here today. But you could have also, if you really love the taste of sauteed pecans in a salted butter, saute those on the stovetop for just 3 or 4 minutes to get them toasted. And then I'm going to be adding 1 cup of butterscotch chips. Now this is what the kids love. You can see we've got a pretty stiff dough. It's a little bit stiffer than most biscuit doughs, but a little bit softer than most cookie doughs. So we want to work rather quickly because, like I said, the leaven is in there and the baking soda, which reacts with the moisture, is going to start working immediately. So we want to get our pans ready before we start putting the dough into the pan. And you could use melted butter if you want to continue the flavor of the butter, and simply baste the butter and paint it into each one of these little tins. But for the sake of time today, I'm going to be using a PAM baking spray. If we're careful about the overspray, you can see it's pretty dynamic. Almost hit my producer with it. So this recipe could make 18 regular muffins, but I'm going to be making 36 mini muffins. So this tin has 24, and I'm going to continue to make 8 more. Now you want the spray to cover the edges. They'll stick pretty much easily to the sides of the pan if you don't spray them completely from the bottom to the top. There are a couple of ways of putting the dough into the muffin tins. You can use a cookie utensil like this, which makes it pretty easy. Or if you don't have one of these handy, you can also use 2 teaspoons to make sure that you put them in. And notice that I'm making these over full for the little muffins. If you would make 18 regular sized muffins, they're not gonna come over the top of the pan like these do, but these will give you best results. But let's just continue doing that. Generally, when I make this recipe, I double it. So instead of 36 mini muffins, I'm usually making 72. Okay, so now they're ready to go into the oven. The oven is preheated to 350. I'll put the second tray in above it and kind of offset just so that there's good circulation. You can see that they've raised dramatically outside of the muffin tin. And I put in the toothpick, still not done. Okay, now we're gonna take the muffins out of the muffin tin, and you notice that I'm using 2 forks here. The reason is we wanna take them out very carefully. Those little butterscotch chips, if we leave them into the tin too long, are gonna cause them to stick. The muffins are cool enough now, and I'm going to put them into a serving dish for the buffet. If you want to store them, if you're making these the day before or making them a couple of days ahead, they freeze really well. Just make sure that you've got an airtight container, and it can sit in a cool place or it can sit in the freezer. Little kids just really love these, big and little kids. Here are the Harvest Pumpkin Muffins, made in Linda's kitchen. So thanks for joining me today, and have a happy Thanksgiving with your family and friends.